It was intended to be a message of gratitude, a time for introspection, solidarity, and thankfulness. However, Bishop William Murphy took the pulpit at New Birth instead, and his purported prophecy immediately ignited the internet. No one was yelling "Amen." Instead, they were wondering what the hell they had just heard was. And the more you examine his words and the reasons behind them, the stranger, the more disturbing and illuminating this whole situation gets. Because New Birth never anticipated having to confront the truth that lies beneath that sermon, the cheers and the social media reactions that went viral. And we're finally revealing the truth today. You already know that Bishop William Murphy's Thanksgiving prophecy sermon at New Birth didn't go as planned if you've been on church social media this week. What should have been an inspiring occasion became a whirlwind of misunderstanding, criticism, and contentious discussion. Videos became viral, comments flew in. They weren't only at odds, they wanted explanations. Was it a prophecy? Was there a performance? Or was there anything far more deliberate? We're dissecting the whole thing today with the clarity, context, and candor that no one else appears to be ready to touch. Because once you hear the whole tale, comprehend the mood of the congregation that day, examine Bishop Murphy's background, and learn how New Birth reacted behind the scenes, you'll realize why this moment had so many people discussing it, and why some people think it revealed something deeper about contemporary church culture. You won't believe what transpired next, I promise. Everything will be unpacked. The sermon, the criticism, the hidden motives, and the unexpected responses from pastors, churchgoers, and those who have been Bishop Murphy's followers for years. You'll have the whole picture by the time this video is over. The portion that was only alluded to on social media and not seen during the live stream. This is where the plot changes, so relax in. At this point, the truth eventually surfaces and things start to become unbelievable. You have to return to the environment of New Birth that morning to see why Bishop William Murphy's Thanksgiving prophetic speech created such a stir. There was already a sense of restless expectation in the room rather than exhilaration. People arrived anticipating the coziness of a holiday greeting, something familiar, reassuring, and upbeat. However, you could sense the shift in energy as soon as Murphy entered the platform. He wasn't at ease. He wasn't introspective. With force, he emerged. He started announcing what he called a prophetic word just 5 minutes into the sermon, and that's where things started to take a drastic turn. He made statements that left many people staring at one another, attempting to determine whether they were missing something or if he was, rather than talking about thankfulness, unity, or healing. While some members of the audience jumped up and cheered, others sat motionless, perplexed, uneasy, or just in awe at the path he was pursuing. Because this wasn't just an off-topic sermon, it was no mere spiritual digression. Murphy started speaking in terms that seemed more like personal projection than prophecy, the kind of statements that sound strong but leave people wondering, who is this really about? The live stream chat immediately lit up with questions and reactions, and those reactions didn't go away. Instead, they grew louder, harsher, and more divided as the message went on. Churchgoers later whispered that it felt more like a speech intended to impress the audience than to lead it. Longtime supporters of Bishop William Murphy were left wondering what had changed and what was going on behind the scenes that could have led him to deliver a Thanksgiving message that didn't sound thankful at all. However, this is the part that most people are unaware of. Visitors said they couldn't decide whether to applaud or cringe. The tone, the tempo, and the sudden intensity make you wonder if this was more than just a sermon or if it was a reaction to something simmering beneath the surface. Several people close to the church said the sermon didn't fit what was originally planned for that service, that something changed at the last minute, and that Murphy entered with a fire he didn't explain. If that's the case, then the question becomes even more pressing. What was he reacting to? His delivery didn't seem casual, unintentional, or like what New Birth was expecting to hear that morning, but the sermon was just the start. What followed, the reactions, the backlash, the fallout, was what really revealed the deeper problems that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. And that's where this story begins to fall apart in a way that no one anticipated. Bishop William Murphy's Thanksgiving sermon sparked an instant response, not only within the church, but also on social media, in news outlets, and in private conversations among churchgoers. Within hours, videos of the sermon started to circulate, and what many had assumed would be a standard holiday message became a contentious moment that went viral. For some attendees, the sermon felt like a personal attack, masquerading as prophecy. Phrases meant to inspire were instead seen as harsh, judgmental, or even manipulative. People started to doubt the message's veracity and motivations. The backlash was not limited to social media, with churchgoers reporting whispered conversations in hallways, worried texts between friends, and heated debates following the service. Supporters defended Murphy, saying he was speaking truth and exercising prophetic authority, while others expressed outrage, saying the message was inappropriate for a Thanksgiving setting. It's important to note the context in order to understand the intensity of the reaction. Longtime followers questioned whether Murphy's delivery was a reflection of personal pressures or a calculated move to assert influence in a time of internal challenges. This speculation swiftly spiraled into headlines, memes, and countless "did you hear what he said?" discussions. Bishop Murphy is no stranger to bold prophetic messages. His ministry has established a reputation for dynamic, high-energy sermons that frequently spark discussion. However, for many of his congregants, Thanksgiving is a sacred, introspective holiday, a time for community, unity, and gratitude. The contrast between expectation and delivery created a tension that many found hard to resolve. Some observers speculated that Murphy might have used the sermon to assert authority or address issues indirectly, but without making his intentions clear in public, the message became a lightning rod for controversy. Several insiders suggested that the sermon might have been influenced by behind-the-scenes dynamics at New Birth, including rumors of leadership discussions, internal conflicts, and increased scrutiny before the holidays. Another layer of complexity surfaced as the criticism went viral online. Media coverage exaggerated some of the sermon's points out of context, which led to misunderstandings and conjecture. Clips were circulated without the complete context of the service, giving viewers a piecemeal understanding and generating an echo chamber of indignation. The most shocking aspect was not just the public response, but also what some insiders reported transpiring behind closed doors following the sermon: discussions, meetings, and arguments among church leadership regarding how to handle the fallout. Supporters attempted to counterbalance the narrative, but the storm had already gathered momentum, making it nearly impossible to control the narrative once it hit social media. People close to the church started to wonder about the long-term effects on members, church culture, and the perception of prophetic authority. And just when it looked like the controversy might be resolved, something unexpected happened. These conversations exposed tensions and difficulties within New Birth that were never visible to the public. The situation escalated beyond anyone's expectations when a few prominent church members took to social media to defend or criticize the sermon, sparking arguments about theology, leadership, and accountability over a single sermon meant to commemorate Thanksgiving. In order to fully comprehend why Bishop William Murphy's Thanksgiving prophecy sermon caused such shockwaves, we must look beyond the pulpit. However, the story doesn't end here, because the most revealing behind-the-scenes details of what actually happened during that sermon, the motivations, the decisions, and the reactions that were kept private, are even more astounding. The decisions, pressures, and unseen influences that shape a pastor's final performance are a side of church leadership that seldom makes headlines. In this instance, those behind-the-scenes forces may have had a bigger impact than most people realize. According to people close to New Birth, the Thanksgiving morning service wasn't entirely scripted in the traditional sense. Although the overall theme of the holiday message was one of thankfulness, some parts of the sermon were improvised, depending on Murphy's alleged prophetic insight, and this improvisation, along with the tensions created by recent church controversies, made it easy for the message to become divisive. According to insiders, Murphy was unusually intense that morning, pacing the stage and speaking with a fervor that was both captivating and alarming. His words were purposeful, incisive, and charged with authority, and he seemed determined to drive home points that many members of the congregation hadn't expected. For longtime followers, it was a departure from his usual balance of inspiration and encouragement, which led some to wonder if this sermon was in part a response to internal church issues or purely spiritual. Although Murphy never publicly named anyone, attendees reported that his remarks seemed to be directed at particular people or groups, which caused a sense of unease in the congregation as members questioned whether they were being singled out or if they were seeing a more general spiritual warning. During the sermon, staff members behind the scenes reportedly rushed to control the reactions, adjusting camera angles, moderating live stream chat comments, and trying to maintain an atmosphere of control. The tension in the room was evident. Phones were out, whispers began, and the energy changed from celebration to cautious anticipation. But the implications went even deeper. Insiders claim that at times, even senior leadership looked at one another with alarm, as if to ask, "Is this going too far?" This event is particularly illuminating because it highlights a little-discussed facet of megachurch culture, the precarious equilibrium between congregational expectations and prophetic authority. A pastor like Murphy has a lot of power, but that power comes with a price. One poorly chosen word, one misinterpreted prophecy, and the entire congregation, not to mention social media, can explode in criticism. And it did. Videos of the sermon started making the rounds on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, attracting comments from both churchgoers and outsiders. Memes were created, reactions ranged from shocked silence to laughter to heated theological debates. And some people viewed the message as a wake-up call, while others called it trashy and unfit for a Thanksgiving setting. However, the most telling part was that those closest to Murphy said the sermon was partially a calculated attempt to address church dynamics without causing an open conflict. This Thanksgiving service became a pivotal moment for many, not one of thankfulness, but one of controversy, division, and contemplation of the limits of prophetic messaging in contemporary churches. It wasn't just spiritual guidance, it was strategy masquerading as prophecy, which is why the fallout was so intense. People sensed the tension, but few understood the context. And just when it appeared that things might calm down after the service, an unforeseen event rekindled the controversy and made it even more intense. The reaction to Bishop William Murphy's Thanksgiving sermon videos on social media was swift, fierce, and divisive. What began as a local controversy at New Birth quickly became a national topic of discussion among churchgoers, critics, and curious bystanders alike. As the video clips went viral and sparked debates in comment sections, YouTube reactions, and news articles that analyzed every word, the backlash was more than just disagreement over interpretation. Viewers commented on the tone, the delivery, and the content, with many calling the sermon inappropriate, out of place, or even trashy for a Thanksgiving service. Murphy is accused by some of putting spectacle before substance, saying that the fiery delivery overshadowed any intended message of unity or gratitude. It was about shock, disbelief, and confusion. The fervor of the online debate revealed something deeper, a growing tension within contemporary church culture between expectation and prophetic authority. Meanwhile, supporters rallied behind Murphy, claiming that the sermon was a bold prophetic word, intended to challenge the congregation and spark introspection, and they praised Murphy for bravely addressing spiritual truths that others might avoid. Particularly during the holidays, people were looking for sermons that were traditional, uplifting, and consoling. Murphy's message, however, defied this expectation, which paved the way for online virality, with influencers, bloggers, and casual social media users joining the discussion and breaking down the sermon line by line. Suddenly, a Thanksgiving sermon turned into a case study of the power of social media amplification, where perception can outweigh context, as screenshots of a few quotes went viral, with some going viral more quickly than others. Behind the scenes, New Birth leadership reportedly frantically tried to control the online narrative. According to insiders, there were phone calls, meetings, and strategic discussions to try to calm the storm before it escalated further, but the more they tried to contain it, the more it spread. Church volunteers and staff worked to control damage, respond to congregational concerns, clarify statements, and try to keep the church body united. Critics accused the church of fabricating the story, while supporters redoubled their efforts by sharing clips, commentary, and analysis, turning what should have been a single service into a multi-layered public debate. What was even more significant about this reaction was its long-term effects. For observers outside the church, it became a discussion about accountability, authenticity, and the fine line between performance and guidance. Many members expressed feeling uneasy, while others questioned their faith in the leadership, and others were motivated to reconsider the role of prophetic messages in their spiritual lives. However, just when it appeared that the controversy would level out into a heated debate, another twist appeared, one that even Bishop Murphy's ardent supporters didn't anticipate, and an unexpected revelation, clarification, or statement would soon spark new arguments and make everyone re-examine the Thanksgiving sermon, its significance, and its ramifications.